morning, everyone, and welcome to the Morning Dream. Today, I want to talk about dreams about prison or prisons. And again, in speaking about this, I'm really talking more too, because this has been my experience with dreamers and dreams that I've seen, for people that really don't have a lot of experience, firsthand personal experience with the prison industrial complex. So I would say most of the people that I've worked with or dreams that I've seen are people who don't necessarily have a lot of experience, but they don't necessarily have any family members in prison. They haven't necessarily been to prisons or are really involved with them in any way. And I mention that because even though they don't really have a lot of personal experience with prisons, I have found prison to be a very common experience or feeling in dreams. In fact, it's an example that I use all the time when I'm talking to people about dreams in general, because I feel like the experience of feeling imprisoned in a dream is very common. And in some ways, this is not very surprising because I think we do, as a human species, as human beings, have a really strong desire and need for freedom. Freedom really on every level. And even though the vast majority of people that I've worked with and just people that I know in society, in my life, are much more free than the average person in the world, and I guess that's sort of a hard thing to quantify, what makes somebody free or not, but I think one level of freedom that I always think about is just free from having to spend all of your time worrying about whether or not you're going to live or die, right? That is a freedom that I think a lot of us take for granted, and in comparison to a lot of people, all around the world, that is not a freedom that they have, right? They really have to be considering whether or not they are going to live or die in a very real way all day throughout their day. And of course, that's the reality in America too. And we've seen and we're hearing and we're coming to understand on a deeper level the ways that oppression is working here in America to make that a question for many people, especially, of course, Black people, Indigenous people, people of color, who struggle on that level on a much deeper way. So why is it that people who don't have that kind of struggle, who are free in so many ways, free to wear whatever they want, say what they want, do what they want in a lot of different ways, and yet in our dreams we're feeling imprisoned, we're feeling trapped, we're feeling like we don't have that freedom? And so one of the very first things I always ask people when they dream about being imprisoned is I want to get really specific about what the prison is like in the dream. So you might just write down, I was in prison, but I really want to ask you, what was that prison like? Were you in a uniform? Were you in a cell? Were there guards at the door? Were there bars at the door? What was actually keeping you imprisoned in your experience in the dream? And the reason why I ask that is because very often when people dream about being in prison, it turns out that there aren't guards at the gate. It turns out that there aren't bars on the door. Sometimes it turns out they're just inside of their mother's basement and there's nothing actually keeping them there. So really the experience of the dream is not that they are imprisoned, but rather that they feel imprisoned. And of course, that is the reality for so many of us. Even though on a tangible material level, we know that we have so much more freedom than our ancestors did, than people around us, the people in our communities are, right? Of course, we still feel like we're imprisoned. We still feel like we're trapped. We still feel like there are external forces holding us back, making it impossible for us to feel that freedom that we want to feel, that is so fundamental to our humanity. And the reason I'm bringing this up and why I think it's important, if you are someone who on that material level you are free and yet in ways inside of yourself you don't feel free, look at those dreams where you're feeling imprisoned. Take a close look at what is actually going on around you. Again, that example of feeling like you're in prison and then realizing, well, actually, I'm just in my mother's basement. Well, that's telling us a lot, right? That's opening up a whole area of investigation. What is it about your relationship to your mother, to your family, maybe to that prison, to that basement in particular, that is keeping you feeling trapped, that is keeping you feeling like you are not free? And the reason why I think it's important that we look at those things or those places inside of ourselves where we don't feel free, when we are more privileged and more free than the average person all around the world, is because when we hold on to those imprisonments inside of ourselves, when we cling to our idea that we are imprisoned or we are not free, then we normalize prison in our external world. And we, in some ways, legitimize it because we're saying, well, I don't feel free inside and I feel like I'm in prison. So it makes sense that some people actually are in prison, in the outside world. So I really think this internal work of recognizing where you feel trapped, where you feel like you are in prison, is really a piece of this whole path of really liberating ourselves and then recognizing through that liberation that all people need to be liberated and that the existence of prisons, the idea that some people can keep other people trapped based on their judgments of their character or however else, it's just not right. It's just not correct. I do believe in the abolishment of prisons. I'm a prison abolitionist, and I think that it's a very deep issue that we allow these prisons to exist in the external world because, again, they legitimize the internal prisons that we keep ourselves in. And we all need to be free in order to see that freedom, I think, living in the world the way we want it to. So thank you for tuning in and staying in for all that time. And just, if you had any dreams about prison or you ever feel in prison in your dreams, again, my one quick tip is just to really look at what is actually imprisoning you on a tangible level in the dream images. And that's going to help you understand how you are staying trapped inside of your own body, inside of your own mind. Okay, thanks so much. Love ya.